Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
You are now listening to the Unscripted Ohio Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Grove and in part by JFQ Lending. All your home purchase and refinance needs should be handled by a Buckeye. You'll never pay for your appraisal with these guys. Licensed in 33 states and more on the way. Check them out at jfqlending.com. For the latest news, notes, analysis, and discussion, check us out on BuckeyeGrove.com and follow us on Twitter at UnscriptedOhio1. Now, broadcasting from Podcast Central, a place that is not his mother's basement.
Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
We promise. Here's your host, Kyle Lamb.
Hey, Ma! The meatloaf!
Good Monday. Welcome back to the Unscripted Ohio Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Lamb. We are brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com with help from our title sponsor, JFQ Lending, and support by GoBus. Ohio's rural intercity bus system can bring you back to Columbus for Ohio State sporting events with over 40 stops to locations across the state. Visit them at ridegobus.com or give them a call, 1-888-95-GO-BUS. And, of course, I mentioned JFQ Lending. All of your mortgage and refinance needs should be handled by a Buckeye, so please check them out at jfqlending.com. They are licensed in 33 states. So, of course, we are here to talk some Ohio State football today. Less than 3 weeks until the kickoff of the 2019 Ohio State football season. Ohio State and the Fighting Lane Kiffins, Florida Atlantic, heading to Columbus here in less than 3 weeks. I am really, really geeked about this. I've mentioned this before. It's kind of weird because I don't have baseball to fall back on as much as I have in the past. By the way, Reds and Indians both being interesting. The Reds really blew a game on Sunday that they should have won against the Cubs. But Aristides Aquino, that guy is turning into a monster. 3 home run game on Saturday night. He's now had 7 home runs in his first 11 games in the big leagues. 7 out of his first 10, actually. And that was a record all-time for the live ball era in Major League Baseball. So that trade that sent Yasiel Puig to the Indians, working out for both teams because Trevor Bauer giving the Reds a formidable rotation if they can just get over the hump and get into the playoffs. Even if that can't happen this year, they've got a really good-looking young offense for next year, and Aquino filling in the right field spot for Puig. They've got a loaded outfield right now with Urban and Puig and Winker and Senzel. But, you know, they can just get over the hump and somehow get into the playoffs this year. You know, that's a really good rotation, the top 3, with Castillo and Sonny Gray and Trevor Bauer. And you've got the Indians, of course. You know, while the Puig departure over to Cleveland gave the Reds that spot to put Aquino in there and then, you know, get Trevor Bauer to continue with the rotation, the Indians playing really, really well now and right there in a real battle for first place with the Twins. So you got both teams in Ohio playing really good baseball. But, you know, this is an Ohio State actually, this is, you know, an Ohio sports podcast, but we focus on Ohio State more times than not. But we could go all day about baseball. I hope the Indians and the Reds make it to the World Series. That'd be an amazing thing. It's been something I've been wishing pretty much all my life. One step at a time. I don't think the World Series is very likely for either team. Cleveland, I think, is a better team than Cincinnati right now, but Cleveland also has a lot more obstacles in their path with the Yankees hitting home runs at a prodigious pace, and then the Houston Astros being a really, really good baseball team. The Reds have an easier path, but they have a long way to go to get back right into that playoff discussion. Still 40 games to do it. Only 5.5 games, I think, out of the wild card spot. So they got a chance, but it's still a long way to go. So anyhow, back to my point. So, like, even though I don't follow baseball as closely as you know, as big of a geek as I used to be, you know, because baseball used to distract me all the way until the end of August, and all of a sudden college football would be here, and it's like, oh, wow, you know, college football is here. But I am very, very self-aware, very cognizant of the fact that, you know, hey, it's almost here. We've got less than 3 weeks. I'm very, very excited about this. So excited, in fact, that trying to get in the mood. We've got Alex Gleitman coming up on today's show. He'll be along here in a few minutes, and we're going to talk about recruiting, what's going on with that running back situation. Why can't the Buckeyes land that 5-star back that they've been, trying to get in on the last couple of years, and where are they going to turn with Knighton and Robinson seemingly out of the picture? I mean, they're still recruiting both of them, but they've committed elsewhere. So we'll get into those things, and we'll talk about spring practice also with Alex coming up here in a few minutes. Of course, if you are not sure who Alex is, and I think most of you probably are, follow him on Twitter at Alex Gleitman. He's a new member of the Buckeye Grove staff. He's a really good insider, by the way. We're very blessed over at Buckeye Grove to have Alex and Mark, two of the best insiders in the game. But I'll let him tell more about his background here in a few minutes when he comes on. And we'll talk some recruiting and some spring practice. But that's what or fall practice. It is no longer spring practice, it is fall practice. But that's what I want to talk about here for a few minutes until he comes on, because let's just get this out of the way. It's like I'm probably guilty of this because, I just spent last week hyping Justin Fields a little bit. And so I probably am partly responsible for this knee-jerk reaction, the opposite direction. But, of course, over the weekend, Ohio State had a little bit of an inter-squad fall scrimmage. And you may have heard Ryan Day talk about how the defense greatly outplayed the offense. And, there were some turnovers and, the not great quarterback play. And he didn't really go into much detail. But if you heard the tone, as many of you did, you probably somewhat reacted with a concerned look on your face, because it made it sound like the offense didn't play very well. But you got to remember a couple of things here, and this is what, there were 110 plays in that scrimmage, okay? 40 of them were from the first-team offense, 40 were the second-team offense, and 30 were the third-team offense. Ryan Day specifically, noted that overall the defense outplayed the offense, but he didn't go into detail who made the biggest mistakes, who made the turnovers. He didn't say if it was the second team, the third team, or the first team. He didn't say if it was the quarterbacks or the running backs or the wide receivers. But you also have to remember a couple things. Justin Fields, the biggest element that he's going to add to the offense this year is the run game, and he didn't get to do that. They take away. You remember they put the black jersey on the quarterbacks. They can't run. So already, it's not really a scrimmage. Just like, in the spring game he didn't look that great, but he can't run. And it's the same thing with the fall practice. He's not running, so you're already taking part of the element away. The defense could just, tee off and pressure the quarterback, and he can't run and do anything about it. So you got to keep that in mind. You got to remember that, they didn't specify whether it was the first team, second team, or third team that was really struggling the most. We do know that there were a couple pick sixes, but again, we don't know if it was Fields, if it was Gunnar Hoke, or if it was Chug, or, we don't know who that came from. And the other thing, too, is, and this is the optimistic view, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but hey, maybe the Ohio State defense just flat out is a lot better this year. We expected the defensive backfield would be really good. We know Chase Young is a top 5 pick if he puts it all together this year on the defensive line. And the hope and the expectation would be that under Al Washington, the linebackers would be a lot better. I tend to think that there are a couple things going on here. When you hear the reports of this scrimmage, I don't read a whole lot into it, but I take it to mean that the defense is probably playing really well. I think you're going to see a top 10 defense from Ohio State this year. That's not being overly optimistic. I really do believe that. I think it's going to be a top 10 defense. I think that most of the problems from last year are going to be corrected. I think the talent is definitely there. I think Malik Harrison is in for a big year. I think inside linebacker, whether it's Taraja Mitchell or Tup Borland, I think you're going to see a big improvement there. I think it's going to be as good a defensive backfield or secondary as anyone in the country. So I think this defense is going to be really good, and I truly believe that Justin Fields is going to be fine. I've been on record as predicting a couple of losses, and I think that's partly due to let's wait and see what happens early. I'm not expecting Fields to come out clicking right away. I think he's going to have his ups and downs. He'll throw some interceptions, I believe, have a little erratic play at times early in the year. And can they get over the hump through games like Nebraska or Wisconsin early on? We'll see if that happens. But I think if they get over that hump early, I think it's all going to be downhill from there with Justin Fields in the offense. I think the running game is going to be a lot better. I think you're going to see J.K. Dobbins. I'm a big Marcus Crowley fan. I've been saying it. Jump on that bandwagon. I think he's going to be the next big-time back at Ohio State. So I'm not too worried about, all things considered, if Justin Fields stays healthy, and that's a big, huge qualifier there, because I do think that if it gets down to the second or third quarterback, then nothing against Gunnar Hoke or anybody else on the depth chart. But, let's face it, Ohio State's biggest goals are probably out the window for this year if Justin Fields gets hurt. But providing he is healthy and at the quarterback position the whole year, I really think Ohio State is going to be fine. Don't take those reports of the scrimmage too awfully seriously. I'm not saying you shouldn't have any concern because, Fields has to prove it. We don't know what he's going to be at quarterback just yet. I'm just saying, just slow down. Don't freak out yet. I think for a variety of reasons, you got to take those reports with a grain of salt. And like I said, I'm kind of guilty of this because just last week I was hyping him because I've been hearing great things from him in practice. And I don't know if that was the case on Saturday in the scrimmage or if that was just a bad day at the office. We all have them. Who knows what went into the performance on Saturday, but I'm just saying don't freak out just yet. So anyhow, let's talk to Alex Klateman now, newest member of Buckeye Grove and the Unscripted Ohio Network.
Stretch runtime here at Unscripted Ohio. Kick up your feet as we cross the finish line with the Buckeye Beat, the latest in Ohio State news and notes.
Kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy.
All right, we are here now with the newest addition to the Buckeye Grove staff, the Ohio State rival site here, and also a contributor to the Unscripted Ohio Network. He probably needs no introduction for most of you, Alex Gleitman, but just in case there are some of you listening that are not familiar with his work, Alex, how are you? And I'll let you kind of give a little bit of a background, where you came from and who you are, and you can familiarize yourself with the listeners.
Yeah, Kyle, thanks for having me on. Really glad to be a part of Buckeye Grove and Unscripted Ohio and the whole podcast network. Going to do a lot of cool stuff this coming season and beyond. But, a lot of you may know me. Maybe some of you might know me from my 11 Warriors days. I actually started a blog when I was in college with some friends called Dotting the I. And, as the summer rolled around, all my friends took part in their various internships activities, and I kind of kept the blog going by myself. And then Jason over at 11 Warriors, they were kind of just starting to get their feet under them a little bit. It was their early stages. They invited me over, and I was part of the team that kind of kickstarted 11 Warriors, got it to a little bit closer to where it was today. And then I moved over to Bucknuts and 24/7 Sports, where I spent the last 5 years. I was at 11 Warriors from 2008 to 2013, and then Bucknuts and 24/7 from 2013 through the end of 2018. And now here I am at Buckeye Grove, and, looking forward to chatting with you, chatting with all the listeners, and engaging with everyone on the Horseshoe Lounge and the whole community over at Buckeye Grove.
Well, allow me to toot your horn a little bit more because it's a pleasure to have you over here. We already had one really good insider with Mark, Mark Gibler, and then to add you, it's kind of double the pleasure, double the fun. So it's really exciting to have you join the team.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I think between Mark, myself, Nevada, Ross Fulton, Kirk Barton, obviously yourself, Kevin, I truly believe this is the best collection of talent at any Ohio State site, and just the pure inside information and analysis that our readers are going to get is just something I think that hasn't been seen anywhere in the Ohio State, blogosphere, whatever you want to call it. So I'm really excited to see, how this thing takes off moving forward. And, it's definitely, Kevin will thank me for this. I'll plug, right now we're running a great promotion of 25% off an annual membership and $75 worth of free Adidas gear for anyone who signs up. And I think, between what you're going to get and that deal, it's really a no-brainer at this point.
Well, Alex, we have plenty of time in the future for me to twist your arm and make fun of you about the annual suffering that is the New York Knicks. So I'll resist the urge to do that on the first show. But let's start off with some football recruiting, and then we'll migrate into a little bit of fall practice chatter. There are a lot of names here. Ohio State running backs in the past, Robert Smith and Eddie George and, Ezekiel Elliott more recently, Carlos Hyde. Maurice Claret didn't make it in the pros necessarily, but obviously the one season he had at Ohio State was about as good as a season when he was healthy as you could have asked for. So given all those names, people are still perplexed at what has happened with the running back recruiting the last couple of years, not being able to land that big fish. Let me start by asking, what in your mind is going wrong there? Is it just, sample size alert? Is there something, what is Ohio State missing that they're not able to land that 5-star guy that they've been chasing?
Yeah, well, Ohio State hasn't landed a 5-star running back, if my memory serves me correctly, since Beanie Wells in 2006.
Yeah.
So it's been, 13 years since they've landed a 5-star running back. But as you've mentioned, there's been some guys, Ezekiel Elliott. Mike Weber's in the pros right now. J.K. Dobbins. Boom Herron was a really solid back. Brandon Sane played in the NFL for a while. So you don't have to land a 5-star running back. What they need to do is get a really good back that fits their system and that they could coach up. That was Ezekiel Elliott to a T. I think J.K. Dobbins is going to have a monster year this year, and I think people are going to say the same thing. I think Ohio State is going to end up just fine at the end of the day. I think, you definitely have to look at the last couple of years. Last year, they didn't get any of the running backs they wanted. Now, Marcus Crowley, early returns are that he's going to be a really nice player at Ohio State, and he may be a bell cow back, a future NFL type of guy, and you may look back and be like, that was really a steal. And saying he's a steal about the Florida Gatorade Player of the Year is pretty crazy. But, last year, let's just say they didn't get their number 1, number 2 choices. This year, they didn't get Kendall Milton. They're not going to get Zach Evans, I don't think. They had both Bijan Robinson and Jalen Knighton silently committed, but both ended up going different places when it came time to announce, their decisions. But I think people have to remember 2 things. One, people don't sign till December, February at the latest. So there still is about 4 more months for Ohio State to get their ducks in a row and sign a couple really good backs in this class. And number 2 is that it's Ohio State. And no matter what type of system Ryan Day is going to run, at the end of the day, they're going to need to run the ball. That's just been Ohio State tradition for as long as anyone can remember. And there's going to be someone out there who wants to play running back at Ohio State, because if J.K. Dobbins leaves like everyone expects him to after this year, it's going to be wide open as far as competition goes. So there's absolutely an opportunity for a freshman to come on campus and at least earn playing time, if not potentially earn the starting job. So I think everyone just needs to sit tight, let Ryan Day, let Tony Alford do their things, and I think they're going to be pretty happy come signing day with what the running back room looks like.
Yeah, the irony is, I think I saw a stat out of the last, a lot of the last 20 years, the 6 best backs Ohio State has had, I think only 1 or 2 of them were 5-stars. So they've had a lot of success, getting by without one. So Alex, with, seemingly Bijan Robinson out of the picture, I know technically, they're going to keep recruiting him and, things can change between now and signing day, but with him likely out of the picture and, Ohio State being forced to turn elsewhere, what are some of the guys you're hearing that Ohio State fans should keep an eye on these next couple of months?
Yeah, everyone keeps asking Mark and I that same question, and the answer truly is, it's too early to tell right now. I think with fall camp starting and prospects kind of being involved in their own camps and preseasons and whatnot, this is going to be something that develops very slowly. But some of the names to think about: Marshawn Lloyd, South Carolina commit. There's definitely been interest there. So he's definitely a name I'm watching. There's differing opinions on how solid he is to South Carolina, but he's a DeMatha Catholic kid, so there's no crazy ties to the South. And Chase Young, that's a former high school teammate of his, so there is some sort of connection there. That's definitely one place Ohio State could look. Another place is Jalen Berger, kind of a dynamic all-purpose back out of Don Bosco Prep in New Jersey. Different coaching, head coach at least, from when they recruited Tyler Friday there a couple cycles ago. But there is familiarity. Ohio State's done a really good job in the state of New Jersey. I think Jalen is still a little bit down the list, but he's another out-of-state name to watch. You obviously mentioned Bijan Robinson and Jalen Knighton we talked about before. Those are 2 that they'll continue to chase. I would say out of like kind of the national names, those are 4 right there. They've offered a couple other guys. I think they're going to take a strong look at evaluating everyone coast to coast, who they could flip, guys that are uncommitted, taking a second look at them, seeing who they really want to go after. And then, of course, there's going to be the in-state guys. I think Michael Drennan right now, it's looking more likely to me that he might be the all-purpose back in the class, but a lot of things can change between now and then. I actually forgot to mention E.J. Smith as another out-of-state guy. Emmett Smith's son. He's definitely a candidate that they're looking at strongly. But I think Mike Drennan might be kind of, if there were odds, he'd be the odds-on favorite as the all-purpose guy. He's obviously a nice player from Dublin Kaufman right down the street who a lot of people had pegged in this class early on. And then you got guys like Meon Williams, who's committed to Iowa State, that I know some in the Ohio State recruiting room really like a lot. And they might be, trying to push Tony Alford, Ryan Day, to take a closer look at him this fall. So there's going to be a number of names, as I said, that come up that we're not even talking about right now, but those are just some of the few that are on my radar as things currently stand.
There obviously is not a huge number of spots left in this class. I'm curious how many more you see Ohio State taking, and also this seems unusual to be able to really turn the page to the next class here this early this fall. And it seems like a good majority of the visits of kids that will be on campus this year will be underclassmen that they can kind of get an early start and really put their focus on.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, they thought they had Bijan Robinson and Jalen Knighton, so they thought this class was even more wrapped up than it already is. But they have 22 commitments right now. They definitely want 2 running backs, so that would be 24. I think they'd love another defensive back if they could get one. That would be 25. And then I think they would like to add 2 defensive linemen, and that would be 27. So there was a little bit of confusion early on with some new NCAA rules. If, they could take 25, they can only take 25, or they could take more than 25. It seems like they could take a little bit more than 25. So I'm going to say with like 27 is going to be the number. And I think, as I said, 2 running backs, 2 defensive linemen, and then maybe a best available. But, Elias Ricks is the guy they're definitely targeting for the secondary. I think they'd like to add another player in the secondary. So that would be 27, which includes Jake Seibert, who's the kicker punter specialist from Cincinnati LaSalle. And, he'll eventually be on scholarship. He may not be on scholarship right when he gets to Ohio State, similar to the way Drew Chrisman or Blake Haubeil or a lot of those guys have kind of done it in the past. But, ultimately, I think they'll be in the, whether you count Jake or not, 27, 28 range when it's all said and done. And there's definitely going to be, as I said, some names that we're not even talking about now that end up on the radar by the end of the season.
I want to turn our focus a little bit here before we wrap up to fall camp. There's a lot of hand-wringing with I think the quarterback position, and a lot of it is because people just haven't seen. I think a lot of it is because people haven't seen Justin Fields play much, and when they did get a look at him back in the spring, he obviously had a little bit of a rough go. But then, the scrimmage this past Saturday, Ryan Day alluded to, a lot of turnovers and the offense being outplayed by the defense. And I'm just curious, do you think people, I know this is shocking that they might do this, but people are getting a little carried away with the concern over the quarterback position?
Yeah, and it's going to happen every year, one position or another. Listen, Ohio State fans expect it's championship or bust. I mean, they expect an elite product every single time that team takes the field, come late August or early September. And whatever position group isn't performing up to that standard, at least at that point in the year, or this point in the year where we are now, is going to get criticism. And that's just kind of what you have to expect if you're a player or a coach at Ohio State, whether it's right or wrong or anywhere in between. Now, for me, what I'm hearing is Justin Fields is an incredible athlete. He's done a really good job kind of building equity with his teammates and becoming a part of the brotherhood and really earning their respect. Where I hear, and his natural abilities in running and throwing the ball are off the charts. I'm hearing he's grasping the playbook pretty well. They're not trying to unravel it all at once. They're going to slowly, game by game, as he shows what he's capable of, kind of unleash him more and take the training wheels off. But I do expect there to be training wheels on early on in the season. He's not the thrower that he's capable of being just yet. He's certainly not going to be Dwayne Haskins. But I think that they know that where he is now versus where he's going to be by the time they're done with him are two completely different players. And how fast they get there, I guess, is up to Justin. It's also up to the coaching and how quickly he develops. So I think that's what they're kind of in wait and see mode. They're definitely going to rely, I think, on his legs and athleticism early in the year. The offense is going to be limited to some extent in the sense that they're not going to have the full playbook to work with because they're just not going to be 100% confident in the ability to execute with him behind center, being a new quarterback, 4 new offensive linemen, a lot of new pieces at receiver. Obviously, those guys have been on the roster, but I think there's just a lot of new pieces, a lot of unknowns. And so I think Justin Fields will be fine in time, and I think he's going to make some spectacular plays. I think he's going to make some young, boneheaded plays that a young player would make. But I think right now people should just wait and see how things unravel, how he performs. I think he's going to be able to, hide some inadequacies with his ability to run the ball and make something out of nothing. So I'm excited to personally see Justin play, and I think fans just need to be patient and trust Ryan Day and have him lean on some of the other strengths of the team while Justin kind of gets up to speed to where he needs to be and where he's capable of being.
I tell you what, not only has he earned the trust of his teammates, but apparently the guy's got some dance moves too. Did you see that the Ohio State football Twitter account to put his dancing out there? It's almost as good as myself, if I may say so.
Yeah, I saw that, and while it was obviously that moment was captured, I think you could see just that. To me, that was like that just like summarized like his arrival at Ohio State. Like it was like official right then and there that like he was comfortable being able to do that in front of the whole team, and they just like embraced him completely. So that was really cool to see, and obviously it looked like the guys were having a lot of fun too.
Alex, I put Kevin on the spot last week with this question. I'm going to do the same for you before we wrap up here. So I want you to give me one offensive player and one defensive player that you're most interested in seeing for Ohio State in the 2019 season.
That's a good question. I'm going to go with. Are we talking guys that that are going to surprise here, or just guys we're most curious to see how they perform this year?
Either or. It could be a surprise, or it could be just somebody that you just are interested to see how they develop.
So on offense, obviously Justin Fields, I think, is everyone's answer, so I'm not going to – we'll put him aside. I want to see J.K. Dobbins. I want to see, does he bounce back this year? Because everything I've heard, he's shredded weight. He's worked harder than ever. Last year was so motivating for him. And he obviously, I think everyone knows he wants to make the jump to the NFL after this year because there's only so many miles a running back has in their young career on them. So I'm curious to see J.K. Dobbins. I'll also say that on offense, I want to see Garrett Wilson. Obviously, everyone's been hyping this kid up for at least a year now. And even when he's gotten to Ohio State, everyone continues to hype him up. And I know the receiver rotation's deep, but I'm really curious to see him. And that I'll say those two on offense. And then on defense, as far as a young guy goes, I want to say Zach Harrison, just because people I've spoken to said he's the biggest athletic freak they've ever seen. And while he has a ways to go as far as the fundamentals and the technique and the use of his hands and playing with leverage and all those types of things, he's going to do some pretty freaky things when he's out in the field, whether it be garbage time or meaningful time. So I'll say Zach Harrison. That's kind of my younger guy. And then, I'll say the middle linebacker position, whether it's Tuff Borland or Taraja Mitchell. I think Tuff last year, obviously I think there was a lot wrong with his defensive scheme, but I think Tuff was also playing injured. And so he's healthy now. It's a more simple scheme. I think they're going to use more down and distance situations with the linebacker. So I want to see how he performs. Is he much better than, what we saw on the field last year, or is he not? And then if he's not, is Taraja Mitchell the real deal? Because Ohio State really needs that thumper in the middle who could come up and make some plays in the gap against the run, kind of the way Raekwon McMillan did while he was at Ohio State. So those are kind of, I would say, the positions I'd be looking for. When I when we watch Ohio State take the field on August 31st.
Yeah, Alex, really good picks, and I especially like that your comments about Dobbins, because he came out and last week and even said, look, I wasn't very good last year. I need to have a much better year, and he's like, I'm really determined to try to improve. So, I mean, even Dobbins is out there saying, yeah, I didn't play to my potential last year.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever reason it was, we've heard so many, like I've heard a lot of things, and I've heard, he was trying to be more of a power back, be able to wear down defenses, put on a little too much bulk, wasn't trying to be the home run hitter that he kind of was his freshman year. So, he's kind of gotten back to himself from what I'm hearing, and, shredded weight and is quicker, faster, more agile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's see that on the field. And while Ohio State leaned on the pass last year, I think maybe with Justin Fields kind of still having a little training wheels on, maybe it's great that J.K. Dobbins will be back to form, and Ohio State can lean on him early in the season. Alex
Glaitman, you can read his work recruiting. He's got a column, The A-Deck, on BuckeyeGrove.com, and of course you can catch him on Twitter at Alex Glaitman. Alex, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I'm very excited that this is the first of many more.
Yeah, definitely, Kyle. It's going to be a lot of fun, and listeners, feel free to shoot us a DM on Buckeye Grove or tweet us or anything you want to hear us talk about this year. We definitely want to make this a show for you. So definitely excited to do that.
That'll be a wrap for the Unscripted Ohio podcast. Thank you again to Alex for joining me today, first of many, and very excited to have him on board at Buckeye Grove and here on the Unscripted Ohio podcast network. Speaking of which, make sure you check out Corey and Johnny for their spin on the weekend scrimmage as well as fall practice in general. They'll be coming up on the Unscripted Ohio Network on Wednesday, and I will be back on Friday to talk more football as we get closer to the end of the month kickoff. Florida Atlantic and Ohio State. Does it really matter if it's Florida International or Florida Atlantic? Probably not. Ohio State should win by 5, 6, 7 touchdowns, but either way, we are getting closer to the kickoff of the 2019 season. You can catch me on Twitter at KYLam8. Catch us every Monday and Friday here on Buckeye Grove, soon to be every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Buckeye Grove, as well as on the archives, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Corey and Johnny coming up every Tuesday and Thursday here at the end of the month, and of course we will be adding a Browns podcast, the Dog Days podcast, hosted by Chris Drew, and we'll be having a college football podcast as well, hosted by Shane Larson. I'll have more information on those two podcasts later this month, but I'm very, very excited. Glad everybody's listening. I hope you stick with us. We got some big things planned, and we continue to grow this thing. Very, very cool. Very excited. Glad everybody has been listening and supporting us and hitting us up on Twitter with your comments and questions and interactions. Really, really cool. Very exciting stuff. Anyhow, that's going to do it for me. Make sure you catch Corey and Johnny on Wednesday. I'll be back on Friday. Hope everybody has a great week. Go Bucks.
You can get new episodes of Unscripted Ohio on Mondays and Fridays exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things Ohio State.